movie.
How's it going, everybody? You know who it is. My name is Sun Wu, and this is the BASTL SOFTPOP 2. In today's video, actually, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I don't have a script or anything. I mean, usually I don't have a script for all these tutorials. However, usually I somehow know an order of things that I want to discuss and how to get through them. But in this case, I don't. At first I thought I should have some kind of hot take on the BASTL SOFTPOP 2 and get more philosophical with it and write a script, but nah, I don't like scripts. And also, I think this synthesizer is way too playful to approach it in such a boring way, which I guess in a way is a hot take as well. However, I thought, yes, this is a playful synthesizer, so I want to explain it while playing this thing or just while having some fun with it. So if you're looking for an in-depth tutorial, this is not going to be it. Loopop already made one, so check that out if you are looking for that kind of stuff. But I'm going to give you my take on this device, maybe explain who I think this device is for, and maybe have some fun with it. So let's get started. First of all, the Casper and BASTL SOFTPOP 2 is a monophonic synthesizer. At first, it was an analog, completely analog synthesizer controlled by digital processors and whatnot. Recently, they have added a second firmware, which includes a digital oscillator now, which has been substituted for the normal analog triangle oscillator. You still get an analog oscillator out of the pulse output, but the triangle now is digital, which I think is really cool because it allows for a lot more variation in the sound, and there are 8 different waveforms to choose from, and these waveforms in itself can transform or morph in different ways. So there's a lot more to do with it. How about we just start by checking the sound of those out? So here we've got the digital oscillator going into the filter input. And on top of that, we can of course turn the orb on to get a light show. So in order to hear the digital oscillator, you gotta plug something from the triangle output into the filter input. And now, if you want to change waveforms of this oscillator, you can press slide and MIDI. And do this. So first let's open up the filter all the way and do this again. You can already hear that this waveform is modulated somehow. But again, you can change all these waveforms. So I'm on waveform 1 now with this slider. So each of the 8 waveforms is more like wavetable maybe. So you can hear there's some modulation going on within. And so on. The latter ones, they get very noisy. Yeah, that's so much about the digital oscillator. I think a lot of the reviews didn't contain much about this oscillator, but I think the inclusion of it is really cool because not only is there modulation within this oscillator, but of course you could also take the output of it and modulate other things within your patch, which is pretty cool. So, as you can hear right now, it's just droning on and playing the same note. I can also turn it to envelope mode. It will immediately stop droning and I don't hear anything. I could now trigger notes manually. But I can also just cycle the envelope. So I'm not even using the sequencer yet, just cycling the envelope, the length of which I can change here, and the shape of which I can change here. Let's make it a bit more snappy, percussive. All right. Again, we can change wave shapes. Then we've got the filter section here. Cutoff frequency and cutoff frequency modulation using the envelope. So the envelope now opens and closes the filter. And we've got resonance. Which, by the way, should be able to go into self-resonating territory. So let's try that out. I stop cycling this, turn on the drone mode. And I stop patching the oscillator into the filter. And now all we are hearing is the filter self-resonating or self-oscillating, which I can turn off. Yep. But let's plug in the waveform again and cycle this again. What I like is that when I'm cycling the envelope and turn into drone mode, that means now only my filter envelope is going up and down, but the amplitude envelope stays up all the time. So then next up, we've got this switch right here. We can change the filter mode from low pass to band pass to high pass. Which is pretty cool that you got a choice of all three. And next up we've got the soft pop pixel slider, which does some crazy internal modulation of the filter. It gets quite nasty from top to the right. I believe this cross modulation has something to do with the pulse, as well as the filter frequency and so on. The pulse wave is derived from, wait a second, is derived from the triangle wave or the digital oscillator in this case, which means that if I change the digital oscillator, the pulse wave should also change in some form. So the analog wave of the pulse oscillator is changing while changing the digital oscillator. So that's pretty cool. I hope I'm not talking rubbish here. but the manual says the pulse is derived from the triangle, so I guess that won't make sense. So yes, we're gonna turn this back to a cycling envelope. Again, we are not using a sequencer yet, which I think is the cool thing about this. I think BASTL mentions this in the manual as well, that you should try using it without the sequencer first to get familiarized with all the features and then dive into the sequencer, because there's a lot you can do even without sequencing. Right now, we're playing the same note over and over, but as soon as I will lift this pitch mod slider up, you can hear that the pitch is obviously changing. The more I slide it up, the more extreme the pitch changes will be. The pitch mod is randomized by a sample and hold circuit that you can find here. And this, I guess, is simply attenuating it. You can still slide the overall pitch down, and it will play around this pitch point. All these pitches are quantized, so if I turn the pitch mode off, the pitch mod off again, and slide this slider, we will get notes that are quantized. Which in itself, if you would buy a quantizer module for Eurorack, that already would cost you a fair amount of money, and that's just built in here. The way it is quantized is that I can select a scale, so scale and one of these gate buttons here. I can also chain scales together and they will play one after the other if I have the sequencer engaged. But if I select a scale, I can now select different notes that I want to include in this scale or exclude. I can do this by holding scale and pressing the up and down keys here. And it will go like this. We've got the C, D, E, F, G, A, and B here, and all the notes in between. And the 1 will show you if the note is activated or not. So C is activated, C sharp isn't, D isn't, this one's activated, and so on. So you can activate and deactivate notes, and the way you can activate or deactivate these notes is by pressing this button. All right. So you can create scales and randomly play through these scales. You can do it with the slider manually, or just wreak havoc with the sample and hold circuit. And then you could manually switch between scales and play a chord progression this way, for example. Let's turn it to bandpass. Maybe just for fun, select a different wave. So pretty cool already what you can do there. It's not getting crazy yet because we haven't turned up all the parameters that make it crazy yet. But let's try out. Let's play with this. As you can hear, we get a more ramp up, or rather a perfect triangle in the middle, and then a ramp up of the envelope when we slide it up, and more ramp down when we slide it down. How about we put it in the middle and then change this shape using the sample and hold circuit, and plug it into the reverse, which is controlling this. Or actually we mult the signal and put it in there, as well as putting it into the rate of the envelope. And because our envelope is cycling the whole time, this will have interesting consequences. So as you can hear, there's already a lot more happening. So again, we're using the sample and hold signal in order to modify the rate of the envelope that is cycling, as well as modifying the slope of it. But what we can do to modify this even more is take this sample and hold signal, plug it in here, which is connected to this attenuator, and now we take the attenuated signal and plug that into the mult. So we are sending an attenuated signal here, which means we can change how much we want these to be modified. So, what else can we do? Something that I like to do is taking the output of the envelope and putting it into the pitch mod maybe, or the transpose. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's turn up the filter resonance and make it self-oscillate. How about we're using the digital oscillator again? Which I forgot we weren't doing actually. And as you can see, by changing the digital oscillator type, we can quickly change our sound. Now I'm taking the envelope output and I'm adding this to the sample and hold signal. Or am I subtracting it? I don't know. I can't even speak anymore. That's how crazy the soft pop is making me. But as you can hear, you just get to weird results with this. And that's what I really like about it. Actually I know. We have one more multiplication of the sample and hold signal up here. And I'm gonna plug that into the pop CV input, which means it's gonna change this parameter here. So as you can hear, it's really a tiny little modular test lab already on its own. Even without the sequencer included, it's so much fun to just patch things from one point into another. And also, of course, a lot of these things are internally connected already. If I can find the diagram, I'll probably put it over there. So the diagram is actually down here, but I'm not going to lift my unit up right now. So many things are internally already affecting each other. So this is affecting this, I believe, and yeah, many other things are internally connected, which makes things go crazy really quickly. So I think I want to unplug all of this again, and then maybe we have a look at the sequencer. So now we are back to hearing the oscillator. Okay. And now I'm going to turn this from drone to envelope. That means we're not going to hear anything unless we trigger the envelope. Okay. But this time we're not going to trigger the envelope ourselves, but we are going to use the sequencer for that. So I'm going to play pattern number 1. So we've got different patterns here. We can have 8 patterns, I think, in 8 banks, and each of these patterns has 8 steps that can be turned off and back on. I don't even know if I explained that in this video already, but either way I can cut it out. So now all these steps are turned on. If I press play, we can hear a very, very interesting pattern. If I want to change the notes, what I can do is I can live record using the slider. Now I've got low notes down there. And now we've got a sequence. We can turn some steps off. We can also set it to slide on various steps. And you can hear the slide there. What we can also do is, of course, we can change the tempo very intuitively by pressing tempo and the up button, or tempo and down button. We can also tap tempo, which is pretty cool. It also accepts external tempo, if I haven't said that yet. And while accepting external tempo from the MIDI input, it also has a built-in clock divider. So if you're getting an external tempo, hold the tempo button and press these keys. You can clock divide signals, which I guess you can even do without getting an external signal. So as you can see, now it goes faster again and slower. So that's pretty cool, different ways of setting your tempo. You can even, I believe, cycle the envelope. And set the tempo according to this cycled envelope by pressing tempo and these. Yeah. And now my sequence tempo is also very fast. So that's pretty cool already. I know it's not a great sequence, but you can play notes in, you can record them live. You can also change notes manually on steps by turning the sequencer off, doing this, and per step changing the note like this, or using the down or up buttons. So many ways to change the notes in the sequence, either more randomly or let's say hands-on, or just more direct and yeah. I can't speak anymore, sorry. Lost the ability. That's what you get for being in the studio all day. Anyway, we can record notes in like this, and as I said before, these will all be quantized to a scale due to the internal quantizer. But you can also choose different scales, which is really cool. So I can play the same pattern, for example. Let's say I press pattern number 2. And now I can move from this scale, in which I have selected certain notes, to this scale. It's still the exact same pattern, but the pitches in it will be quantized to a different scale or a different chord. So this way you could chain chord progressions one to the next and evolve songs this way, in a very intuitive way. So let's chain these two together. And maybe chain 2 patterns as well. And that's how easy we can create a melody. But these are not the only tricks you can use in order to spice things up here. Again, we can use a few slides. And we can use temporary effects. They're kind of like punch-in effects on pocket operators. We can even use multiple at the same time. And we can even record a loop of those by pressing these two. That didn't work this time, but yeah, it worked this time. If we want to delete this, press trigger and play again, and that recorded loop is gone. Another way to spice things up is play modes. And these play modes determine in which way your sequence will be played back. So it doesn't just go from 1 to 8, but it can also go backwards, random, or only play the first bit. And you can activate play modes by hitting play and then pressing 1 and these. Or maybe I do this. Yeah, so you can see it plays back in the sequence that I have set. And that means it jumbles around your whole sequence and therefore creates variations of the notes you have put in. And I can go back to just a single play mode if I press play and press that play mode. So as you can see, you can really mess up your sequence easily and just change things around so organically and easily that it just becomes a very playable experience, and it really is an instrument that you can approach in a different way from, just a monophonic synthesizer with a keyboard attached where you really have to input all the notes yourself and come up with the goods. Here, you just feed it some information and it takes whatever you give it and creates something new out of it. And if you want to, you can mangle it up further by changing these play modes, changing the temporary effects, changing scales, changing patterns, and so on. So it's really cool, and you can even live turn steps on and off, and yeah, whatever comes out. Let's try something else out that is pretty cool. First, I'm gonna slow the tempo down even more. So the sequencer is running now. And while before we cycled the envelope without the sequencer running, let's see what happens if we cycle the envelope while the sequencer is running. So this is without. This is with cycling. So we can get rhythmic within this sequence even. Live transpose this sequence. So as soon as I slide the pitch fader down, this whole sequence will be transposed. And with so few little changes, you can really change up your sound completely. Let's randomize some stuff again. Alright, now I think I should conclude this by talking about who I think the BASTL SOFTPOP is for, and I'll start by talking about who I think it isn't for. If you are one of the people who have bass lines or melodies already in your head, and all you are looking for is a monophonic synthesizer to play these lines on, then I think the BASTL SOFTPOP might be a little bit of an overkill, as well as a waste of opportunities, because of course you can use it as a nice monophonic synthesizer with a keyboard attached to it and play those lines, but you would be wasting a very nice sequencer, you would be wasting a lot of patch points and so on, so maybe you could find a better synthesizer for the job. If, however, you are at all more experimentally inclined, which means you often start with a blank slate and then you turn some knobs and see what comes out of it, and you want to create bass lines or melodies out of nowhere, see what they sound like, maybe edit them a little bit further, chain them together and create a song that way, then the BASTL SOFTPOP is definitely for you. And I think I couldn't describe it any better than Patrick from BASTL, who described the SOFTPOP 2 to me as a songwriter synth, and I really couldn't agree more with him, because the way you can just easily set up melodies by throwing up and down a slider and defining different scales in order to not be out of key in a very easy and quick way, I think makes this a great songwriting tool and helps you to come up with new things within your defined boundaries. So that's really cool. And at the same time, you don't have to write songs. You can also go modular crazy on this thing and just create noise and drones, which is very easy with it as well, and create weird feedback stuff that gets very harsh and noisy. So it can go from soft melodies that you can completely create on it to the craziest noise and the harshest stuff. As the name implies, it's a feedback communicator, so a lot of feedbacking and stuff can be done. And with its internal patch points, it invites you to try out modular synthesis. So if you are wanting to get into modular synthesis, I think this is the perfect device. Even if you don't want to get into modular and just want a nice experimental synthesizer, this is great. And if you already own a modular system, but you want to expand with a few new building blocks, this has so much built in, from the MIDI in capability to the sequencer to a quantizer to different filters, high pass, band pass, low pass, to digital oscillators in varying forms to analog oscillators. There's so much in here that you could incorporate into your Eurorack setup, and that's why I think it's pretty much a bargain. Yeah. These are my praises for the SoftPop 2. Thanks to BASTL for sending this to me. I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. This is not going to be my last video with this. In fact, I'm going to make a sample pack on this very soon. And with that being said, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would appreciate a like, a comment down below, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. And if you want to learn more about music making and stuff, contact me for private online lessons. A link up there or down in the description. Peace.